"You're not even supposed to be home during the inspection," Karen said, hand already on the knob. "You received the HOA notice. We have a right to ensure compliance." "You don't have that right," I told her, calm but clear. "And the lock you just bypassed still reports to a private server I built myself. Every time you touch that key, I get a notification with your fingerprints. If you've ever felt that surge of power when standing up to bullies, hit subscribe now. This showdown is about to become a masterclass in fighting back. My name is Caleb Monroe, digital forensics analyst, widower. And the house she just tried to walk into, my daughter was inside, alone. That lock was installed by me, the server coded by me. And the only reason she didn't get arrested right there is because I let her walk away. For now. Because this isn't just a house. It's the last place my wife touched before she died. The porch swing? She picked it. The trim color Karen keeps citing as too reflective? That was the last paint swatch my wife held up while laughing through chemo. My daughter was 10 when we moved in. Now she's 16 and smart enough to lock the doors, but not old enough to face a stranger walking in with a fake badge and an HOA lanyard. Karen didn't just cross a line. She walked into our grief, our legacy, and treated it like a spreadsheet entry. Where are you watching from? Because out here in Willow Glen Heights, they think silence is permission. But I'm not wired for silence, and Karen Driscoll just made the worst mistake of her tenure as HOA president. I waited until she stepped back off my porch before speaking again. "Your face is on 3 angles of video. You used a master key on a locked home. That's criminal entry." She scoffed. "We're authorized—" "No," I said, stepping out just enough to block the doorframe. "You're not. You're pretending to be." Karen's eyes narrowed, but she didn't deny it. And that's the moment I knew she'd done it before. Back inside, Maya was standing frozen near the kitchen, still holding the phone she'd tried to use to call me. I put my hand gently on her shoulder, and she looked up, pale, angry, ashamed of being afraid. "She just opened it, Dad. She didn't even knock." I nodded. "I know. It's all on camera. Not just the door. Audio, too. You did everything right." Maya's jaw tightened. She acted like it was normal, like I didn't matter. And that was it. The thing that mattered most. It wasn't about a technicality. It wasn't about bylaws or security protocols. It was about the look on my daughter's face when a stranger walked into her home and acted like she didn't have to explain herself. I stayed up most of that night, reviewed the footage, pulled the timestamps, and ran a quick export from my server array. 3 angles, 4 audio triggers, 1 fingerprint set on the knob, her thumb mostly, enough to validate if it came to that. And it would. Karen's authority only held power because people believed in it. But HOA rules are not law, and the moment they try to act like they are, that's where I come in. By morning, I had a folder built. WG, H entry incident, 0624, categorized, tagged, and mirrored to cloud storage across 2 continents. This wasn't going away. I wasn't letting it. Because here's the thing, bullies like Karen, they don't break into homes because they want to inspect light fixtures. They do it because no one stopped them, yet. Drop a like if you've ever wanted to stand up to unreasonable rules like this, and subscribe to see how this strategy plays out. I walked out the next morning and saw Karen across the street, clipboard in hand. She waved like nothing had happened. Her smile was too wide, too rehearsed, like she already had a cover story ready. I just smiled back, not because I was pretending, but because I already had the footage cued, edited, and marked for press delivery. This story's just getting started. The next day, I didn't start by calling the DA. I started by talking to my neighbors. A few of them were out, watering lawns, unloading groceries, walking their dogs. Suburban normal. But once I brought up what happened to Maya, the mask started slipping. "Oh my God, she walked in?" Mrs. Langford's eyes went wide. "That explains the weird noise last week. I thought I imagined the door unlatching." Across the street, Jeff Grimaldi just shook his head. "She's done it to us too. Said she had to check the water flow integrity or some garbage." I was in the shower. She'd been getting away with this for months, maybe longer, all under the banner of the Willow Glen Heights HOA, and not one person had pushed back, at least not publicly. Why? Because they were afraid. Afraid of the fines, the retaliation, the endless nuisance letters about unauthorized fixtures and ornamental inconsistencies. That's how Karen worked. She didn't just enforce made-up rules, she weaponized them. And the neighborhood fell in line, one silent compliance at a time. But I didn't work in landscaping or finance. I built threat assessments and authenticated security failures for courtrooms. I knew exactly how to document abuse, because I'd spent 10 years helping companies stop it from happening. This time, I was documenting her. I went to the community center that afternoon under the pretense of attending the monthly HOA walkthrough. Karen was there, clipboard in hand, talking to a resident about their lawn, edging not being formally contoured. Her voice had that syrupy, smug cadence of someone who'd never been told no by anyone with a badge. I kept my distance, just listened. Interior window shades affect the external aesthetic, she told a man in khakis who looked like he hadn't slept in days. We may need to consider a compliance warning. Window shades. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just targeting structures or fences. She was creating a backdoor into people's homes, metaphorically and literally, blaming efficiency audits, safety spot checks, even passive-aggressive health justifications. I pulled out my phone and jotted a note. List all entries under energy compliance wording. As I left the center, I passed Tom Bennett, the HOA secretary. He was standing near the water cooler, flipping through a folder like it had personally offended him. I gave him a nod. He returned it stiffly, eyes down. There it was, the hesitation. Tom knew. He might not have the spine to confront her yet, but he knew what she was doing was wrong. And if I could pull just one board member into the light, the whole facade would start to crack. Back at home, I started compiling interviews, informal, quiet ones. Just neighbors telling the camera, off record, what they'd experienced. She let herself into our backyard, said it was a fence height check, one woman whispered. Another said, she flagged us for a swing set after our son broke his arm, like we weren't already drowning in bills. And worst of all, she said she had keys to every unit, just in case of emergency. But who defines an emergency, Caleb? Her? Exactly. The footage I had wasn't just a single invasion. It was the lit match. Now I was finding the gas trail behind it. By sunset, I had 6 anonymized interviews, 3 potential witnesses who'd be willing to go on record, and a growing list of HOA notices all phrased the same eerie way. Interior access may be required to ensure full compliance with Section 4.3b of the Energy and Visual Cohesion Code. There is no Section 4.3b. I checked the bylaws twice. That's when I realized we weren't just victims of overreach, we were test cases. Karen had been running her own quiet little empire of control right under everyone's noses. And the worst part, no one thought they had the power to stop her, but I did. And I wasn't just going to stop her. I was going to make sure no one like her ever held a master key again. Tom Bennett's hands were shaking. I noticed it as he fumbled with his clipboard during the HOA subcommittee meeting the following Tuesday. The community center conference room was small, windowless, and always smelled faintly of old coffee and printer toner. Karen sat at the head of the table, legs crossed neatly, not a hair out of place, rattling off updates like a bureaucratic drill sergeant. We've issued 3 new citations for non-conforming exterior tones, she said smoothly. 1 on Brookstone Drive, 2 on Alder. That brings us to 37 this month. Tom scribbled something and immediately scratched it out. His pen hovered in the air for a beat too long, then dropped to the table with a sharp clack. Karen didn't even blink. I sat in the back as a guest. Technically, HOA meetings were open attendance, but no one ever came. That day, I wanted to watch, not Karen. Him. Tom Bennett, secretary of the Willow Glen Heights HOA, wore responsibility like a coat 2 sizes too big. Sweaty, fidgety, his collar slightly askew, he looked like someone in a constant state of apology. But he also looked like someone who'd finally seen too much. When Karen moved on to a proposed interior access clause amendment, my stomach turned. She read it like it was already law. To permit periodic interior evaluations solely for the purpose of maintaining property standards as described in Section 4.3b under emergency compliance discretion. Emergency compliance discretion. She really thought she could codify her break-ins with a fake clause and a couple of buzzwords. Tom glanced up when she said it. Not a big reaction, just a half-second eye flick. But I caught it. He didn't believe her. He hated this. That was my crack in the armor. Mr. Monroe, Karen said without looking at me, Do you have a question about this proposal? I stood slowly. Actually, I do. Has Section 4.3b been officially ratified? She smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. It's part of the Master Compliance Framework. You'll find it outlined in our upcoming quarterly revision. Interesting, I said, because I've read the bylaws. Twice. There is no Section 4.3b. The air in the room stalled. One board member shifted in their chair. Tom's hand went rigid, frozen above his meeting notes. Karen's voice dropped half a tone. We're in the process of revising that section. You mean inventing it? She turned to face me. Mr. Monroe, unless you're here to provide constructive input, I'm here to stop you from lying to this community and calling it governance. Tom's pen snapped in half, literally. A clean accidental break down the middle of the barrel, like his hands had just given up trying to hold still. He stared at it, then looked up at me, really looked for the first time, and something shifted behind his eyes. Not fear, not yet courage, but doubt. That kind of raw, unavoidable doubt that ruins your ability to pretend. Karen banged the gavel, even though no one had spoken. Meeting adjourned. The board members stood too quickly, like students excused from detention. Tom lingered, his eyes darting between the shattered pen and the exit. Outside, I waited by the bike racks. I wasn't going to chase him, but I was going to be there. Tom came out last, hugging his folder to his chest like it might sprout legs and run. You know she's lying, I said quietly. I saw your face in there. I don't know what you think you saw, he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Tom, you broke your pen in half. He stopped, shoulders tight, eyes tired. She says we need unity, he said after a long pause. She says internal disputes weaken authority. Number. What weakens authority is criminal entry, fabricated, bylaws, and a woman with a master key acting like she owns people. He swallowed hard. I can protect you, I told him. You don't have to take the fall for her. Tom didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. And that silence, that was the first step. Drop a like if you've ever seen someone stuck between conscience and fear, and subscribe, because next time, that silence breaks wide open. The notice was taped to my front door like a scarlet letter. Compliance demand, immediate attention. Required violation, non-cooperative occupant access, Section 4.3b. Action. Failure to comply may result in formal lien process and escalated fines. It was printed on thick ivory paper, embossed with the HOA's gold crest. Karen loved theatrics. But I knew better. This wasn't official. It was intimidation dressed in formality. Maya spotted it before I did. She was coming back from school, earbuds in, when she froze at the front steps. I was watching from the garage, tightening the latches on a storage case, when she turned to me and said, "Is she threatening us now?" I walked over, peeled the notice off the door, and scanned it. The wording was deliberate, vague enough to scare, specific enough to sound legal. But it wasn't. There was no lawful authority behind Section 4.3b. It was fiction. She's bluffing, I said, but she's getting bolder. Maya nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She didn't feel safe. And when your own kid doesn't feel safe in the home you promised her, it hits different. I used to think losing my wife was the hardest part. But watching fear nest inside Maya's chest like that, it was a second kind of grief. That night, I scanned the notice into my archive, labeled it Escalation Notice, Entry Threat. Metadata time-stamped, embedded visual hash code. Karen had no idea the paper she left would end up in 3 mirrored servers, flagged and ready for submission. Next, I visited the Grimaldis across the street. Jeff opened the door with a tired look on his face, like he hadn't rested properly in years. His wife Tessa joined us a minute later. She hit us with one last week, Jeff said, waving a copy of a nearly identical notice. Threatened to fine us for refusing her access to inspect our attic insulation. She told us we'd be recorded as non-compliant occupants, Tessa added, whatever that means. I asked if I could take a photo. They agreed. I added it to my evidence queue. Same formatting, same fake clause. This wasn't an isolated scare tactic. Karen had built an entire paper-based illusion of power, and most residents didn't know how to fight it. She tells people they'll lose property value, Jeff muttered, if they resist compliance. She tells people a lot of things, I said. Back home, I reviewed old emails from the HOA, specifically the ones Karen had sent over the last year. I ran a keyword search through my archive. Access, inspection, compliance, entry, emergency. The results were damning. 8 separate emails used threatening language implying entry rights that didn't exist. 3 used a made-up clause. 2 referenced unified visual consistency mandates, which wasn't a thing in any formal code. She wasn't just overstepping. She was building her own legal sounding system, and she was counting on everyone being too scared, too busy, or too uninformed to challenge her. But I wasn't any of those things. I was building a timeline now. Dates, notices, statements, copies of entries logged by the smart locks, mine, and at least 2 other residents who'd shared their access data voluntarily. Karen's name came up on every master key timestamp. Every one. I needed to get ahead of her next move, because the escalation pattern was obvious now. Step 1, enter quietly. Step 2, threaten compliance. Step 3, isolate and pressure. But I was changing the pattern. The next morning, I filed a report with the city housing department. Not a formal complaint yet, just a flagged inquiry about unauthorized inspections and the abuse of association authority. Enough to get it logged, enough to start a trail. Later that day, I saw her walking the sidewalk again. Clipboard, sunglasses, smile like she'd already won. I stood in the driveway, arms folded. She looked right at me, then glanced at my camera above the garage. She knew. But what she didn't know? I'd already submitted my first batch of footage, and the notice she left, it had just become Exhibit A. I cracked the logs at 2:43 a.m. Couldn't sleep, again. So I sat in the glow of my home office, the hum of cooling fans surrounding me like white noise. I'd pulled the keyless entry records from my own system weeks ago, but something about Karen's movement pattern didn't add up. Too many inspections, not enough authorization. So I did what I do best. I traced the digital trail she didn't know she was leaving. Most residents use standard smart locks provided by the HOA's preferred vendor. What Karen didn't know, that vendor's system had a diagnostics API with time-stamped records, public-facing if you knew how to look. Most homeowners never change the default settings. But I did, and so did my neighbor across the cul-de-sac, Brian, the guy who worked from home as a network tech. I'd helped him install a second-layer security patch 2 months ago. He owed me a favor. He granted me admin mirror access, not surveillance, just the back-end logs. Read only, all legal. What I saw nearly made me drop my coffee. Karen's master key, listed as admin override A1, had been used on 6 homes in the last 3 weeks. All after 9 p.m., none marked as emergencies. One of them was Brian's. Another was Mrs. Langford's. She lived alone and had told me a few days back about hearing footsteps outside her back window. Another belonged to a family that left town every weekend. That one, logged at 11:12 p.m. on a Saturday. This wasn't compliance, it was trespass. I screen captured everything, formatted the metadata, attached log strings to timestamps, matched to smart lock MAC addresses. I didn't need a smoking gun. I had a digital bullet with her name on it, but I wasn't done yet. I ran a quick lookup across the master HOA email servers using an open-source metadata header parser. Their communication software didn't scrub IPs properly. I traced 2 internal messages from Karen's account that referenced silent inspection timing. One of them, dated the night before she walked into my house. Make sure lights are out and lock isn't changed. We'll do the walkthrough tomorrow. I just stared at the screen. She planned it, not as a routine visit, not as an accidental stop, but with deliberate timing, assuming no one would be home, assuming Maya would be at school, assuming she'd get away with it. I compiled the logs into a single master document, called it Keylog KD Exhibit Chain 01. It wasn't fancy, just facts in order. Timestamp, address, door access, exit confirmation, if any. The shocking part? On 3 of the 6 entries, there was no recorded exit, just door open. Then silence. Either the system failed or she stayed longer than anyone thought. I emailed the first copy to myself and backed it up to my offline vault. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. I stood up and looked around my office. Photos of Maya, shelves of my wife's old design books, her sketch of the backyard landscaping pinned above the desk. Karen walked in here like it was hers. No more. That afternoon, I went back to the Grimaldis. "Do you use the HOA smart lock?" I asked. Jeff nodded. "Yeah, default install. Why?" I showed him the log. His jaw clenched. "She accessed our place? When?" "Last Thursday, 10:37 p.m. Tessa's hand flew to her mouth. Jeff blinked. "We were out that night, at the hospital. My brother's surgery. I could see it in his face, the disbelief curdling into something sharper. Anger. Violation. The knowledge that someone had walked through your home without permission and left nothing behind except a chill in the air. I didn't have to ask for permission." Jeff grabbed his laptop and logged into his system. I helped him extract his access logs, verified them, and added them to the file. That made 7 homes, 7 violations. By nightfall, I'd built the outline for a full exposure drop, clean headers, organized exhibits, redacted addresses for privacy, just like I'd do for any digital evidence case heading toward prosecution. Except this time, I wasn't being hired to do it. This time, it was personal. Karen thought no one would trace her footsteps, but I was tracking every single one. Maya stopped leaving her bedroom at night. I didn't notice it at first, just figured she was sleeping early, staying up scrolling on her phone like any teenager. But then 3 nights passed. The hallway light would stay on, untouched. Her bathroom door never moved. I finally knocked gently and cracked the door open. She was curled up on the bed, blanket pulled up to her chin, headphones in, but not playing anything. "Maya," I said softly, "you haven't left this room." She glanced over and gave me a forced smile. "I just feel safer here." That's when the guilt hit, hard, because no matter how much data I had, no matter how many logs I pulled or reports I compiled, none of it had stopped what already happened. Karen didn't just breach a door, she'd shattered a boundary Maya had every right to trust. "I'm handling it," I told her, "but if this ever happens again, if anyone shows up uninvited, you don't answer. You don't even get close. Just call me and lock down the house." Maya nodded, but I could see it, the weight in her eyes. She didn't feel protected anymore, and the fact that it was her room Karen walked into, not mine, made it worse. I left the room and shut the door gently behind me. Then I pulled out the flash drive. I'd compiled everything: footage, logs, screen captures, voice memos, scan citations. 7 homes, 3 families willing to testify, a forged clause cited on 2 different fake legal forms. What I hadn't decided yet was how far I was willing to go. I thought of calling the city again, filing a formal complaint with the HOA Oversight Commission, going through the system. But the system didn't comfort Maya, and it sure as hell didn't scare Karen. No, this needed something sharper, public, unignorable. I sat at my desk and stared at the symbol in the upper right corner of my screen, a draft email addressed to a local investigative journalist. The subject line just read, "WGHHOA Master Key Abuse, verified logs attached." I hadn't sent it yet. Not because I didn't believe in the case, but because once I hit send, there'd be no walking it back. No protecting my anonymity. No isolating my daughter from the fallout. This wasn't just a rogue HOA president anymore. It was a predator in a business suit, and if I didn't act now, it'd happen again. To someone else's kid. Maybe worse. I clicked the attachment field, selected the zip file, hit upload. Halfway through the progress bar, I stopped it. Not because I changed my mind, but because I remembered something else. Tom. He'd been silent since the last meeting. Not a text, not an email, not a reaction when I passed him yesterday on the sidewalk. He looked like a man chewing glass in slow motion. He was my only link inside the board. If this went public before he flipped, Karen could isolate him, erase him, rewrite the narrative, and without an internal voice backing my claims, the HOA might frame the whole thing as a personal vendetta. I closed the draft. I'd wait one more move. I needed to hear it from Tom. I needed him to say the words. The next morning, I went out early. Walked past Karen's house. Her car wasn't in the driveway. I circled back and saw Tom tending to the community bulletin board near the park. His hand trembled slightly as he pinned a notice. I approached slowly. No camera, no accusations. Tom, I said quietly. She accessed another home. 2 nights ago, after midnight. He didn't look up. Mrs. Langford has early-stage dementia, I continued. She thought she imagined the door creaking, but the lock log says otherwise. His hand dropped. She's scared, and I've got logs, timestamps, and video clips. But I need your help. Just one document, just one confirmation. Tom looked at me like a man whose own silence was suffocating him. I can't do this alone, I said. Still, he said nothing. But he didn't walk away. That afternoon, I reopened the email draft. I was done waiting. Karen had made her move. Now I was making mine. Drop a like if you've ever had to walk the line between justice and safety, and subscribe if you know what it's like to hold the match while deciding whether to light it. Tom showed up on my porch just after dusk. No text, no call, just a soft knock, 3 quick taps like he hoped I wasn't home. But I was. And when I opened the door, he stood there, pale and rigid, gripping a manila folder so tightly the corners had curled. "I don't have long," he muttered, stepping inside. I led him into the kitchen. He didn't sit, just hovered like a man being chased by something invisible. "She's going to notice it's missing," he said, holding out the folder. I took a copy, not the original. I opened it slowly, half expecting blank paper, but inside were printed emails, time-stamped meeting minutes, and one sheet that made my pulse jump. Subject: Master Key Usage Memo, internal only, from Karen.Driscoll@whoa.org to Tom Bennett, Laura Yee, Kenneth Brower. Non-disclosed access ensures minimal disruption. Avoid prior notice where safety inspections are at risk of non-compliance. Keep documentation off official channels. I looked up. "You realize what this is?" Tom nodded once. "Evidence. Of intent," I said. "Of policy. Not just a rogue entry. This proves she orchestrated it." Tom didn't speak for a second. Then, "She told us we'd be sued if we questioned it. Said we were protecting the community." "And you believed her?" His shoulders sank. "I wanted to, but I knew better." He pointed to another page in the stack, internal board minutes, unapproved and unsigned. Karen had blocked formal discussion about the master key use 3 months prior. The note next to the motion: "Deemed unnecessary to disclose, President's discretion." "This is enough to burn her," I said, scanning the pages again. "You're sure no one knows you took these?" "I copied them late last night. Karen keeps a drawer in her HOA office, bottom right, loose folder labeled overflow. She thinks no one reads. Minutes anyway." I almost laughed, the arrogance. "She's wrong," I said. Tom hesitated by the door. "I can't go public, not yet, but if you need more, I'll help. Just keep my name off it. You just tipped the scale, Tom. I'll protect you." He left without another word. I scanned everything. PDF-ed each page with embedded metadata. Cross-referenced the emails with timestamps from the access logs I'd collected. It all lined up. The night Karen entered our home, the digital log, and the internal memo, same 24-hour window. She didn't just violate my home, she put it in writing, encouraged others to do the same. But I still needed one more thing before I lit the fuse: impact. I couldn't just throw it online. It needed eyes, pressure, witnesses. So I contacted someone I'd been holding in reserve, a local reporter named Vanessa Lowe. She'd broken a story 2 years ago about an HOA in Marigold Heights that forced a veteran to remove his accessibility ramp. She specialized in neighborhood overreach. I sent her a secure download link with a simple message. "Vanessa, this HOA president entered my home with a master key while my daughter was inside. I'm not the only one. The files speak for themselves." Caleb Monroe. She responded in 12 minutes. "This is explosive. I'm coming to you tomorrow. Bring everything." That night, I sat on the edge of Maya's bed. She was sketching something, her way of processing. It was a drawing of our porch swing, our safe place. "I talked to someone," I told her. "Someone who's going to help make this right." She looked up. "Are you scared?" "Not scared," I said. "Just done being quiet." Her hand found mine. "Me too." The next morning, I brewed a full pot of coffee and laid out the folder for Vanessa on the dining table. The doorbell rang at 10:02. Vanessa Lowe didn't waste time. She stepped inside with a messenger bag slung across one shoulder, a weathered notepad in hand, and eyes that scanned the room like she'd already filed a headline. You've got footage? She asked before she even sat down. I nodded and handed her the drive. Video, access logs, internal memos, and a witness, conflicted, but he came through. Vanessa plugged in the drive, her fingers flying across her keyboard as the folders opened. She paused at the first clip, the one of Karen unlocking my front door, walking inside without a knock, with Maya home alone. No narration, no edits. Just raw footage, sound intact. She didn't flinch. This is enough to light up every local forum in the county, she said. But if I run it as is, she'll claim it's an isolated incident. Personal grudge, miscommunication, misunderstanding. I tapped the second folder. There's more. 7 homes, 3 late-night entries, 2 forged notices, a board memo instructing silence. Vanessa's brows lifted. She opened the memo Tom had given me, skimmed it, then read it. Again, slower. Her jaw tightened. She weaponized authority and disguised it as oversight. This isn't mismanagement. It's control through fear. I nodded. And I think she's used that master key more times than the logs show. We just don't have every homeowner willing to come forward yet. She's counting on that, Vanessa said. People stay quiet when they think no one else will stand up. She didn't count on me, I said. Vanessa smiled faintly. Number? She didn't. We spent the next 3 hours outlining the story. Not just a rundown of violations, but a narrative, a name, a face, and a string of abuses backed by digital proof. Vanessa was good, too good to post without fact-checking. She cross-referenced the timestamps, tested the footage for edits, even ran the access logs through a basic forensic validator. It checks out, she finally said. You've got a bulletproof file. She closed her laptop and leaned forward. We'll run it as a feature, video segment included. I've got a contact at the Channel 9 investigative desk. We'll pitch it for syndication. And I'll push it to our online platforms by Friday. If Karen's smart, she'll resign before this goes live. She won't, I said. She doesn't think she can lose. Vanessa glanced toward the hallway, where Maya's door stood cracked just enough to reveal light. She walked into your daughter's space. That's not just an article. That's outrage. Before she left, I gave her a printed copy of the full report. If anything happens, I said, you've got this. She tucked it into her bag. Caleb, if she tries to spin this, I'll bury her in facts. She left just after sunset. I watched from the porch as she pulled out of the driveway. My porch swing creaked behind me, wind tugging it gently side to side. That swing was the last thing my wife touched before the chemo took her hands. The last thing Maya sat on before she knew what loss tasted like. Karen didn't just open a door. She walked through something sacred. Now the world would see it. By midnight, I'd prepped additional backups. One uploaded to a secure drive overseas, another mailed on a protected USB to an advocacy group specializing in HOA abuse cases. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being thorough, because I knew the storm was coming. I also knew I wasn't the only one watching. Tom texted me at 1:14 a.m. She called an emergency board session for Thursday. Wants to rewrite access policy before the newsletter hits. Be ready. I smiled. She was scrambling. Thanks, I texted back. I'll be there. I added one more line. We're not letting her shut this down. Maya came into the kitchen a few minutes later, hoodie pulled over her head. Couldn't sleep, she mumbled. Me neither. She opened the fridge, grabbed orange juice, then paused. You still going through with it? I nodded. It goes out. Friday morning. She hesitated. Can I say something on the video? I blinked. Are you sure? She looked at me, eyes steady, voice calm. She walked into my room. I want people to know how that feels. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Yeah, I said. Yeah, you can. We recorded Maya's statement just before sunrise. She insisted on doing it on the porch swing, said it mattered, said if Karen was going to violate her space, then that same space would be where Maya reclaimed it. I set up the tripod, leveled the frame, and double-checked the audio. No script, no coaching. Just a quiet morning, a light breeze, and my daughter sitting beneath the same oak my wife planted the year Maya was born. She looked straight into the lens. My name is Maya Monroe, she said, voice clear. I'm 16. I live in Willow Glen Heights, and a woman I've never invited into my life used a key I never gave her to open the door to my home, while I was alone. She paused, swallowed, then continued. I didn't know what to do. I just froze. I didn't want to scream because she acted like it was normal, like I didn't matter. Another pause. I haven't slept well since. I checked the lock twice. I don't walk around at night. I keep thinking, what if I'd been in the shower? What if I hadn't locked my door? And what if she's done this to other girls? She looked down. Her fingers gripped the swing's armrest tight. I'm tired of being scared in my own house. I stopped the recording there. That was enough. More than enough. I transferred the footage to the drive, encrypted it, then synced it to Vanessa's cloud folder. I labeled it Victim Statement, Minor, Consent Filed. I'd already notarized my parental permission. By 9 a.m., she messaged me. Powerful, we're closing with it. By noon, the media package was locked. Vanessa cut a tight 4-minute segment, my video footage, 2 anonymized witness interviews, the access logs laid over a neighborhood map, and Maya's voice anchoring the close. The headline read, Master Key, No Consent. Local HOA president caught entering homes without warning. We agreed to hold the peace until Friday morning, 7 a.m. sharp. Enough time to alert the DA, give homeowners a chance to come forward, and make sure Karen couldn't wiggle out through legal gray areas. I spent the rest of the day preparing for that final blow. First, I met with Jeff and Tessa Grimaldi, showed them the video edit. They agreed to be named, said it was time people knew the kind of intimidation they'd been living under. Jeff even offered to speak at the next board meeting, said he wanted Karen to look him in the eye when he told her she wasn't above the law. Then I called Mrs. Langford's daughter, who'd just flown in from Nevada after hearing about the story. She confirmed they'd be pursuing legal advice, said they'd already changed the locks and filed a police report after reviewing the footage. You gave us something we didn't have, she said. Proof. That night, Tom met me behind the community center, hood up, shoulders hunched. I read the notice, he said quietly. She's calling it a policy clarification. Wants the board to ratify her access authority tomorrow, before the story drops. She's trying to make it look legitimate, I said. He handed me a printed agenda. She doesn't have the votes. I raised an eyebrow. Ken's backing out. Laura's scared of liability. If Jeff speaks, it tips everything. And you? I asked. Tom looked up, eyes steadier than I'd seen in weeks. I'll speak too. I nodded. Then we end this tomorrow. Back home, I opened my laptop one last time, reviewed every folder, every file, every frame. I clicked open Maya's video again, just to hear her voice. Calm, steady, brave. Karen didn't realize what she walked into. This wasn't just a house. It was a legacy, a memory, a line drawn in stone. And she crossed it. At 6:59 a.m., I hovered over the send button on Vanessa's Drive interface. At 7 a.m., on the dot, I clicked, and just like that, the silence broke. Drop a like if you've ever watched someone reclaim what was stolen from them, and subscribe, because this fight belongs to everyone who's ever been made to feel small in their own home. It hit like lightning. By 7:12 a.m., my phone had 12 notifications. By 7:18, it was vibrating nonstop. The story was live, Vanessa's report on the Channel 9 homepage, already reshared on Reddit and picked up by a regional news aggregator. I watched it unfold in real time, each view count ticking up like a pressure gauge about to blow. Karen Driscoll's name was right there in the headline, HOA President Caught, using Master Key to enter homes without permission, caught on camera. And then the video began. There she was, pausing in front of my door, glancing left, right. No knock, no hesitation. Just the twist of a key, a quiet push, and the door opened wide. The footage froze just as Maya's startled voice could be heard calling out. That silence that followed? You could feel it even through a screen. Maya's segment came last. Unblurred, unfiltered, 16 years old, and unshakably composed. I didn't feel safe in my own home, she said. She walked in like she owned it. It wasn't rage that flooded in after. It was something deeper, recognition. Comment after comment, post after post. People shared their own stories, their own HOAs, their own Karens. This happened to my dad. He was fined for denying access to his garage. Our HOA used entry threats to scare elderly neighbors into compliance. Never again. Never another unchecked president thinking they're above consent. I walked out onto the porch around 7:45 a.m. The neighborhood was eerily quiet. But by 8:15, it started. Tessa Grimaldi posted the awe. Story to the Willow Glen Heights community group. Jeff commented with a screenshot of their fake compliance notice. Tom, yes, Tom, liked both posts. By 8:30, I saw Karen's SUV speed away from her driveway. By 9 o'clock, 3 local news vans were parked just outside the subdivision's main gate. And by 9:12, HOA inboxes were full. I pulled on a clean button-down and grabbed the thick folder I'd printed the night before, hard copies of everything, just in case she tried to dismiss the digital versions as edited or taken out of context. Maya was at the kitchen table, spooning cereal distractedly. She glanced up. "It's today, right?" she asked. "Board meeting's at noon," I said. "You don't have to come." "I want to." I looked at her. My daughter, no longer just someone I had to protect, but someone standing up for herself. I nodded. "All right, but you let me do the talking." She grinned faintly. "Yeah, but if she opens her mouth, I might laugh." We arrived at the HOA clubhouse early. The parking lot was full. People I'd only seen from a distance were out front, talking in clusters, holding copies of the article, some scrolling their phones with hard looks on their faces. Inside, the board table was already set. Karen wasn't there. Tom was. He gave me a sharp nod, a quiet sort of confidence in his shoulders that I hadn't seen before. The rest of the board trickled in, Laura, eyes darting, Ken gripping a thermos like it was armor. They didn't speak to the crowd, just sat, waited. At exactly noon, Karen walked in. Her posture was tight, polished, but I saw the tremble in her fingers when she adjusted her papers. She was trying to ride the storm like it hadn't hit. "Let's begin," she said, voice clipped. "There is misinformation being spread." "Stop," I said from the front row. She blinked. "You're not a board member, Mr. Monroe. You walked into my house, you stood in my daughter's room, and you told this community it was justified." Silence. Tom stood. "Karen, the footage is real, the memos are real, and the policy you pushed was never approved by vote." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked to Ken, then to Laura. Neither spoke. I handed a folder to the board. Evidence packet. Includes access logs, timestamps, internal correspondence, and 7 other homeowners with matching experiences. The room murmured. Some gasped. Karen looked out at the faces around her. And for the first time, she looked small. The walls were closing in, and the reckoning was just beginning. You could feel it in the room. Something had shifted. Karen sat rigid in her chair, lips pressed into a thin line, staring straight ahead like a defendant pretending the trial wasn't happening. But it was. And the jury wasn't just the HOA board anymore, it was everyone. Dozens of residents had packed into the clubhouse, more than any meeting in HOA history. Standing room only. Phones out. News cameras just outside the double doors. Tom cleared his throat. "Let's bring this emergency session to order." He looked nervous, but he spoke clean. Confident even. That mattered. Karen tried to interrupt, but Laura leaned into her mic and cut her off. "We'll begin with public statements." That was when Jeff Grimaldi stepped forward, holding his violation letter high. "This," he said, voice steady, "was taped to my door 3 weeks ago. It threatened liens, fines, and legal action unless I allowed someone to enter my attic to inspect visual harmony. My wife and I were at the hospital that night. Caleb has the lock data, and guess what? Someone accessed our door while we were gone." He turned to face the crowd. "You want to know what visual harmony looks like? It's people knowing they're safe in their homes, not being terrified of the person who holds a master key and walks in like she owns the place." Applause. Scattered at first, then swelling. Karen shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting. She tried to keep her posture upright, but her face was flushing red under the fluorescent lights. Tessa followed next, then Mrs. Langford's daughter, then Brian from across the street, holding printouts of his access logs and digital audit trail. Each one told their story. Each one exposed her pattern. Then came Tom. He stood at the front, his hands folded around a manila folder, the same one he'd brought to me nights earlier. "I was afraid," he said quietly. "At first, I thought she just wanted order, but then I saw what that really meant. Silencing dissent, bypassing consent, falsifying authority." He opened the folder and held up the internal memo. "I was there when she told us not to document key usage. When she said emergency discretion could be invoked without vote, I didn't speak up then. But I am now, Karen snapped. That document was private. You accessed it without authorization. And you accessed homes without authorization, I said, standing. Every head turned. I walked forward and stopped beside Tom. I watched my daughter's safety be treated like a footnote, I said, holding up the folder of evidence. You walked into our home. You crossed the one boundary that should never be crossed. Karen stood suddenly. You people don't understand. This neighborhood needs standards. I kept property values up. I kept us orderly. And at what cost? Someone yelled from the back. A woman near the front added, You broke into our lives, Karen. Maya stood up. No warning, no signal. She just stood, and the room fell silent. You opened our door, she said softly. While I was home, alone. Karen froze. I didn't scream because I thought maybe it was my fault, Maya continued. But now I know it wasn't. You thought no one would say anything, but I did. No one clapped. No one spoke. It was heavier than that, deeper, like truth sinking into walls that had held nothing but fear. Karen reached for her gavel. This meeting is over. Tom stepped forward and took the gavel from her hand. No, Karen, you don't get to end this. Laura looked at her calmly. As acting vice president, I move for a vote of no confidence. I second, said Ken without hesitation. All in favor? Laura asked. Every hand at the board table rose. Karen stared at them, her mouth opening once, then closing. She backed away like someone realizing the floor beneath them was cracking. I'll sue, she whispered. All of you. You already did, Tom said. With every lock you opened. Karen walked out alone. The door closed behind her, and Willow Glen Heights breathed for the first time in years. Karen's resignation was effective by sunset. The board posted the update in a simple statement on the HOA portal. No apology, no admission, just a clipped announcement. President Driscoll has voluntarily stepped down. A special election will be scheduled. But out here, it wasn't just a change in title. It was the end of an era, one ruled by silence, fear, and forged authority. And it didn't end with fireworks. It ended with the quiet sound of a gavel being removed from her hand. By morning, the neighborhood felt different, not fixed, not healed, just real. A couple of porch lights stayed on longer. People waved without pretending. Jeff stopped by with 2 coffees and a handwritten thank you card from Tessa. The Grimaldis were going to file with the DA. Vanessa had connected them with a civil rights attorney before she even aired her follow-up piece. As for Tom, he sent me a short message. I've submitted a formal whistleblower statement. The others are backing it. The door's locked now, for good. He didn't mean a literal door. He meant the one Karen used to walk through without asking. Maya and I spent most of that weekend reclaiming the space she once violated. We painted the hallway, washed out that flat beige Karen once called uniform, and replaced it with soft blue, my wife's favorite. We hung new shelves. She picked the pictures. No approval needed. On Sunday afternoon, she brought out a folded piece of paper. I found this in Mom's old sketchbook, she said. It's a design for the porch swing. She wanted to add armrests and new chains. I held the drawing for a moment. The lines were light but precise. My wife's handwriting curled along the edges. Widened seat for mornings, secure chain for breeze sway. She drew this right after I was born, Maya said. And just like that, I knew what we were going to do. The old swing came down that evening. I reinforced the brackets, swapped the chains, and followed the sketch to the letter. By nightfall, we had something new, something that belonged to us again. Not as it was, but as it should have been. We sat there in the dark, the breeze soft, the new swing creaking gently beneath us. No cameras, no commentary, just quiet. Until Maya said, "Do you think she'll face charges?" "She should," I answered. "But what matters is, she can't do it again." That night, I reopened the email thread with Vanessa, attached the latest developments, told her about the special election, the internal reforms the board was discussing, and the security audit now required for every key stored under HOA custody. She replied within the hour. "Good. People are watching now?" They were. The HOA subreddit lit up again. Residents from other communities started asking for copies of our access policies. One woman from Arizona said her board president stepped down after seeing our story go viral. People started using our case file as a template. That was the ripple. That's what happens when one person stops whispering and says, out loud, no more. Drop a like if you've ever had to fight to be heard, and subscribe if you believe no one should ever fear their own front door again. I watched Maya fall asleep on the couch later that night. She hadn't done that in months. Her face looked lighter. Her guard was finally down. And me. I stood by the window, looking out across a street that once watched us suffer in silence. Now they watched with respect. And that was enough. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through well-documented facts and a daughter's voice on a porch swing, and dignity. It's in the right to lock your own door, and know no one's coming through it without your permission. If you've ever fought back against an HOA overreach, or if you're still fighting, drop your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. You're not alone, because the lock on your door should answer to you, and no one else.